From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman, hosted by Carl Franklin. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 143, recorded live from South Africa Thursday, December 18th, 2008. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik, RAD Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. And by .NET Developers Journal, the world's leading .NET developer magazine. Online at www.sys-con.com. In this episode, Scott talks with Victor, a lawyer and lecturer from the University of Lesotho.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. And again, like I was last week, I'm still here in South Africa, and rather than doing IT-focused technology podcasts for the next couple of weeks, I'm doing man-on-the-street interviews here in South Africa with real people. Today, I'm fortunate enough to sit down with Victor, who is a lecturer at the University of Lesotho. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Hello.
So, I think that the people that are listening to this show may not be familiar with Lesotho and how it is situated on the African continent. Maybe you could give me a little bit of geographical context.
Yes, Lesotho is a tiny country. It is located inside South Africa. It is the only country in Africa which is completely surrounded by South Africa. Every time you cross the border of Lesotho, you walk into South Africa. And it is formerly a British colony, and it got its independence in the 1960s during the time of apartheid. So you can imagine that immediately out of Lesotho there was apartheid, and inside Lesotho there was a free country. There were lots of political difficulties at the time.
Now, why is it that it's a country and not a province of South Africa?
Well, I think when the British came in, it was essentially they had two such countries. First, there was Swaziland, and then Botswana, which were British protectorates. But they colonized Lesotho. It was not a British protectorate like Swaziland. They made it into a colony, and it came directly under the Queen's rule. It was a very interesting setup that came through Lesotho.
Now, I've heard people refer to it as Lesotho, Lesotho. What is the correct way to pronounce the country?
Well, I think Basotho, those are the people, the indigenous people, they call it Lesotho. But it is spelled Lesotho. So most of us call it Lesotho because of the way it is spelled. But for the Basotho, it is Lesotho, the land of the Basotho. That's what it means. Yes.
So you're a lecturer at the university, and what is your specialty?
Well, I teach mainly in the legal field. I'm a lawyer, so I teach different courses in law, things like family law, commercial law, property law. It varies depending on the needs of the faculty from time to time.
Now, my understanding of the law is limited to what goes on in the U.S. and from what I watch on U.S. legal TV shows like Law and Order and these kind of drama shows. What I know about the British system is that they have barristers instead of attorneys, but I really don't understand how law works on the continent. Are there multiple legal systems? Does each country have their own legal system?
Well, Lesotho is a dual legal system. Basically, it means that we have two legal systems. The customary law, which is the indigenous law of the Basotho people, which is applied mainly to in the villages. It's adjudicated by chiefs and so on. And then we have the inherited law, the Roman Dutch legal system, which was brought into Lesotho, as much as South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. Now, what it means basically is that when the British came and colonized South Africa first, they found that the Dutch had settled in the Cape and they were operating the Dutch legal system. So then when they extended their occupation into Lesotho, they decided that the law which was operating in the Cape will be the same as the law which is operating in Lesotho, and that applied to all the other colonies. They actually passed a law to specifically legitimize the application of Roman Dutch legal system. They didn't bring in English law. But what happened was that the people who were administering the Roman Dutch legal system were English lawyers. So there was a lot of influence of English law. They were being asked to apply Roman Dutch law, but they were not trained in the Roman Dutch law. So at the end of the day, the inherited law, the colonial law, became an amalgamation or a mixture of English law and Roman Dutch law. So in most of our laws, although we talk of Roman Dutch law as the law which is applicable, there is a lot of influence of English law. And in modern days, because of the growth of the global village, even American law, there is in things like commercial law, insurance, property laws, there's a lot of a mixture of in Anglo-American laws into our systems. So basically we have the customary law as well as the imported Roman Dutch law, which is strictly speaking not Roman Dutch law as such.
So it's a Roman Dutch law 400 years in the future and kind of broken off into its own style.
Yes.
And you actually borrow laws from the American system, from other systems.
Yes, I think what basically lawyers say, we draw from the Roman Dutch law as the sources of our law, the leading judgments, the leading what we call the jurists, those who wrote about the Roman Dutch law. But the influences from other legal systems like English law, we say those are persuasive, so that if a judge is deciding a case and there is no law which is applicable, he can be persuaded to borrow from other systems.
Really? So a precedent is almost set, kind of an implicit precedent by a case that's being done somewhere else in an entirely different country, an entirely different legal system.
Yes. What we normally, what judges do, they apply precedents from previous decisions within their own country, let's say precedents from Lesotho. But in the absence of a precedent from within Lesotho, they have to look at other like legal systems and see whether a decision in a similar case in another foreign country would persuade them to apply that particular judgment. And the foreign countries, they would normally look to, first of all, England, the former colonial country, and the American legal systems as well, because as I'm saying, in the commercial world, the laws are becoming more and more universal, so that it won't be strange to find that in certain aspects, American law and Lesotho law are the same.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman with a word from our sponsor. Do you know how to build Web 2.0 AJAX applications with Web 1.0 components? You really can't. If you want to do the next generation web applications, you'll need next generation components, just like the ones that our friends at Telerik have got. They're RAD controls for ASP.NET AJAX. It's a huge pack of web controls built on top of ASP.NET AJAX that'll add previously impossible performance and interactivity to your next project. The new controls mirror the AJAX API from ASP.NET, so development is really straightforward. The client scripts are shared, so loading time is not a problem. You just set a couple of properties and you'll be able to automatically bind to web services for a really efficient operation. The new RAD editor from ASP.NET AJAX Telerik loads up to 4 times faster than before, and the new RAD grid handles thousands of records in just milliseconds. But as always, it's best to try for yourself, so you can visit telerik.com/ASP.NET AJAX and download a trial. Thanks a lot. So globalization is becoming the de facto standard, to the point of even contracts being similar all over the world.
Yes, indeed. There is a lot of that. As I'm saying, especially in the laws dealing with business in general, whether local business or international business.
Now, customary law might be something that's interesting to people. These are laws that were there before white folks showed up. This is for dealing with struggles and conflicts within perhaps a chief's influence area, a village. Is that correct?
Yes. Customary law basically operates at a very simplistic level. family relations, neighbor relations. You look at situations where, for example, a boy from one family impregnates a girl from another family. Usually in the villages that will be dealt as a customary matter. Because in the context of Lesotho, for a boy to impregnate another girl before marriage, that raises a question of liability on the part of the boy, that he will be liable to pay damages, which is 6 head of cattle for having impregnated that particular girl before negotiations for marriage can even take place. That the very act of impregnating a girl from another family before marriage is actually treated as a wrongful act, as a tort.
As a tort. So now, after he's paid 6 head of cattle, though, is there not an obligation? Like in the U.S., there's kind of an implicit obligation to take care of your child until they're 18, and there are laws for parental obligations. Or is it simply pay your 6 head of cattle and move on?
Apparently, there is a conflict here between customary law and the received law. Because at customary law, if the boy or the family of the boy pay their 6 head of cattle, they are done with that child in the absence of marriage. It is the girl's family who must look after that particular child. Should the family of the boy want that child at a later stage, when the child grows up, they are required to pay extra cattle. But on the other hand, the received law says that if you father a child, you are obliged to maintain. So it now depends on which law the family of the girl chooses to utilize. If they choose to utilize the Roman Dutch law, then the boy may be the girl can go to court and claim maintenance under the Roman Dutch legal system. But if they go for the customary law, then it means that the family must ask for the head of cattle.
But doesn't that require a level of education on the part of the girl and the girl's family? They may not know that these laws exist.
I think we shouldn't underestimate people and say that they are not educated. I think in general they do know what the law says, but the families, as far as I have realized, in most of this Southern Africa and Africa, they do what I call in legal terms forum shopping. They look at which legal system will best serve their interests. If customary law will best serve their interests, then they will go for the customary option. Let's say, for example, the boy who has impregnated the boy has impregnated the girl is not working, but the family know that the parents have lots of cattle, they'll go for the customary option. But suppose the young man is working, is earning a salary, the girl may decide to opt for the Roman Dutch legal system and claim maintenance because he has an income from which he can claim maintenance.
That's quite clever.
Yes. Yeah. That is exactly what happens. And we have had similar experience in other countries like Zimbabwe and so on. But I have to say that in general, my experience is that in Southern Africa, men who father children out of marriage generally do not want to look after them. And women in general struggle to get maintenance, even from those that are working and are willing to, are able to afford to pay maintenance for children. They will refuse to pay say, if you want me to pay maintenance, give me the child. But I will not give you my money, because if I give you my money, you're not going to give it to my child. That is the attitude, unfortunately.
Now, your specialty is not just law, but also women's issues in law, and you've recently been working on a paper on how the legal system actually kind of supports masculinity. Yes,
to a large extent, we live in a men's world. I remember that recently I read a book called A Man's World, talking about masculinity. Basically, we have a situation where patriarchy, or the dominance of men, is the order of the day. And it does not matter whether you are talking about Southern Africa or the United States or any other country in the world. We may have countries where women have gained certain advantages against men, but in general, we are looking at a system where the legal system itself is generally unresponsive to women's needs. in the sense that if I can use a very, very simple example, we have a crime in Lesotho, whereby a woman who commits abortion will be criminally prosecuted. But the law does not say anything about the person who is responsible for the pregnancy, even in a case where the boy, after impregnating the girl, disappears or says, I am not responsible, you are on your own. And then we also have other crimes like, which are unfortunately real. We have had women who dump babies, women who kill babies when they are born. And in those cases, the law will punish the women regardless of the social circumstances that is pushed the woman to do such a thing. I don't think that any normal person would want a woman would want to kill a young child. But we see a situation where women are pushed and the law is unresponsive. And another offense which is even common, I would say, in countries like the United States, the battered woman syndrome, where women pushed to the point where they kill the husband because that is the only defense mechanism left to them. But what does the law say? You are guilty of murder in most cases, but the law has not moved fast enough to say, what are the circumstances? What leads this woman to do this? And unfortunately, also in our part of the world, generally, the issue of violence of men against women is either not taken seriously or it is generally underestimated. It is normal. Clapping a woman or punching is not something that can be taken quite seriously unless the woman is severely injured. Then we say, but people will not say it was wrong to beat. They will say you went too far in disciplining this particular person. So that is the kind of attitudes that women have to deal with, and it's a massive problem.
In the States, in the county that I live in, they recently changed some of the laws with regards to domestic violence, such that if you were my wife and I grabbed your wrist, and I just squeezed just a little harder than you appreciated, and you decided to call the police, you could say, "Lock him up. I don't want to see him for a month." So they've swung the pendulum all the other way. Any unwanted physical contact then becomes a domestic violence issue if the woman or if the man in this case, but usually it's focused towards the woman, says that I don't want to be touched in that way. So that instantly the husband is drug away.
Yes, I think that is, I would commend that kind of law for the simple reason that in the majority of cases, a woman whose wrist has been touched will not run to court and say that somebody touched my wrist. I mean, there are extremes, but basically the law is sending a clear message that it is wrong to use violence of any form against anybody. You must respect somebody's bodily integrity. But on the other hand, in Lesotho, for example, we don't have domestic violence legislation. It is treated as assault. So, a woman who has been violated by the husband physically has to pursue common assault or assault to do grievous bodily harm and so on. And that is an ordinary criminal process, and we know that the criminal process takes forever. Unfortunately, the police attitudes also, a woman who comes to say that my husband claims me, but with nothing to show that there's been some kind of physical damage, will be laughed out of the police station. They'll say, but what did he do to you? We don't say anything. And I've actually had personal experience where a person I know had that kind of situation, and the police were very, very reluctant to press charges. And eventually that case never went beyond the police station.
But isn't that's an example not necessarily of the law not being on her side, because it was in fact, but rather that's institutionalized patriarchy culturally?
Yeah, partly yes, I would say that. But I would go so far as to say that the problem is bigger than that. If we had a law which forbids domestic violence, then you could begin to change attitudes. You could begin to train the police that any form of violence, even if it does not lead to any injury, is wrong. But in this case, because we don't even have a law which says that the domestic violence is a specialized kind of problem. It happens within the confines or private department and generally is not readily seen. So you need specifically legislation about it.
I see. So even the simple fact of naming it and giving it a name and pointing to it and saying that is different and that is wrong, even though the result may still be similar to an assault charge, that is valuable.
Yes, it is a first step, I would say. South Africa has domestic violence legislation, but South Africa is one of the highest incidents of domestic violence. But I believe that by passing that law, they have put the first brick, if you like, in a difficult building process.
It seems to me that the countries in Africa that take a problem head on, name it, and start coming forward with cultural reconciliation that this is a problem. Like, for example, the way Uganda handled the HIV crisis, and now the way that that South Africa has started to kind of demystify AIDS, moving from myth to reality, trying to think about very publicly. Everywhere as I move around South Africa, I see signs and billboards and television commercials that are making sure that people know their rights. You cannot be fired from your job because you have HIV. It seems like some kind of a countrywide expression of the domestic violence and the problem of domestic violence, the same way that they're doing with AIDS could move the ball forward.
Yes, I think that is very important to go public about these particular things. Let me just share one last example of what we are talking about. Until very recently in Lesotho, it was not a crime for a husband to rape his wife. We didn't have a crime called marital rape. But in 2003, they passed a law which makes marital rape an offense. Now, that has not led to a rush of people going to court to say my husband has raped me or that. But it is a sign that the law is coming to the reality that rape can even take place within an intimate relationship. So that to me is a clear indication that with some of these culturally entrenched problems, you need to have a law that sends a message. But at the same time, you then need to mobilize the people, raise consciousness and so on, so that the law can then support that particular change in the attitude.
It's definitely a step forward. Well, thank you very much, Victor, a lecturer from the University of Lesotho, for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you very much.